all locational analysis is about monopolistic competition. And the theory of monopolistic competition has some very interesting qualities to it. And I'll give you one of them, which is in effect quite funny. But back in the 1920s, a man called Hotelling started to look at monopolistic competition in terms of location. And he used the example of where would two ice cream sellers on a beach locate themselves. From the social point of view, you would think that they should locate themselves about 1/4 way in from one side and the other 1/4 way in from the other side, so that they actually divided the market into two, and people would have access to the ice cream seller at a reasonable thing. So you would expect a long beach, and you would expect two ice cream sellers to be 1/4 way in, and then 1/4 way and half a way will be between them. So you could imagine that, and you would say that is an optimal thing from the standpoint of consumers, because that minimizes the travel time of consumers to get the ice cream, because everybody is close enough to the one where they're located. But then Hotelling points out and says, well, let's suppose the ice cream sellers are mobile, and one ice cream seller moves the barrow a bit closer to the center. And so in doing, actually, in terms of distances, starts to steal some of the consumption capacity from the other ice cream seller. Well, the other ice cream seller will compensate by moving a little bit closer back into right, and matter of fact, maybe moving a little bit further to steal a bit from the other. And this process will go on, says Hotelling, until you end up with two ice cream sellers on the beach, both of them located next to each other, right in the center. This is a very interesting thing, because I've often gone to beaches now, and I always look where the ice cream sellers are located, and they're always located in the center. Because this is the nature of monopolistic competition, that you are competing for the market and by moving to the center. But this is not optimal from the standpoint of the consumers. In other words, the social optimum, which would have you spread out on the beach, is violated by the competitive optimum, which means the two of them together. So two ice cream sellers on a beach, there you have it. Then Hotelling did something very interesting, and he said, well, what happens if the third ice cream seller gets onto the beach? Well, then the whole thing gets unstable. That is, the third ice cream seller moves in, and one ice cream seller has to move out to compensate that, and they will do that until one will hop over and go to the other. In other words, with three ice cream sellers, and you can play this game if you like, you end up, it's totally unstable. Now, this is actually high economics, because if you have instability, it means you have no equilibrium. And therefore, there's no equilibrium locations which can be derived, and that means there's no equilibrium prices. And that, and that drives economists crazy. Now, this is one of the things you see from the two ice cream sellers example, is that there tends to be a push towards agglomeration. That is, the two, in this case, the two sellers get together and make a kind of basic. Now, in cities, what you'll find is that this is frequently the case. All of the jewelry stores in New York City, well, not all of them, but a big number of them are on 59th Street. It's, there's you would think that stores would spread out across the city. But if you want to buy, say lights or something like that in New York City, you go to a certain area of town because there are lots of light stores. Another one is a jewelry area. And so you're going to get concentrations coming out, because that's the way competition works. Competition produces these results, which are not necessarily optimal from the standpoint of the total organization of the system, which means that individual capitalists in competition with each other produce results all over the place which are not socially optimal. And just one minor point at the end of this is how Hotelling actually is used in political science. Because in political science, the argument would be, well, where do political parties position themselves in terms of an electorate? Do you stay out on the far left? Do you stay out on the far right? Where do you stay? No, If you move a bit towards the center, you steal some of the voting power of your rival. So they move a bit closer to the center. So in a two-party system, you'll end up with both parties right dead in the center. Very little differentiation going on between them, which has been the case in the United States for many, many years. The result is that you get two wings of the party of Wall Street, as I like to call it. The one's called Democrat and the other's a Republican.